Hello, this is Colin from Mox Team Zirconia, and today we have a special video where we were offered a brewing challenge, and we are going to take two colors from the 30-card free welcome decks that Wizards of the Coast gives to new players, and we are going to upgrade those decks so that you could play them against people who have other standard decks or more competitive decks at your local game store. Now, this is so new players can have a very small investment and get into Magic the Gathering and still have a lot of fun playing against other people. We're going to do two different levels in this video. We're going to start by only adding $5 worth of cards to this deck, and then we're also going to do a version that adds $15 to the deck to make it even more competitive. Here we go. All right, thank you for joining us today. So, we've been given the challenge from Rhino, the young mage, to take red and green as our two colors and smash them together and see what kind of deck the welcome decks make out of that and then upgrade it. Now, don't forget that we are only one of several YouTubers that have taken on this challenge, and there are other color pairs that have been given out to other fantastic content creators. So make sure you go down to the description and check those videos out, because we want you to be able to find the deck that is going to give you the most fun and be the most enjoyable for you to put a little bit of money into and go to your local game store and have fun as a new player of Magic the Gathering. So, Wizards of the Coast made these lists of cards, and they are, to be perfectly fair, pretty underpowered compared to some of the decks that people you would meet at a game store would have. So, before we get into what changes we made, let's just go ahead and take a quick look at what they've given us and talk about some of the creatures and spells that might not make the cut and go from there. Okay, so the list that Wizards of the Coast gave us runs 21 creatures, 6 instants, 26 lands, because each pack of 30 comes with 13, 5 sorceries, and 2 enchantments. Now, here's the thing. There are a lot of cards on this list that are just pretty much unplayable in Standard. The power level of Standard is so much higher that if you're playing these cards, you're just going to end up behind. They're not worth the mana to cast them. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through them in depth. I'm just going to tell you that we removed 21 of them just out of the gate. We removed Arborback Stomper, Brazen Scourge, Falconwrath Reaver, Frontline Rebel, Giant Spider, Hyena Pack, Rootwalla, Stalking Tiger, Stampeding Rhino, Terrain Elemental, Terror of the Fairgrounds, Thundering Giant, Spidery Grasp, Renegade Tactics, Wing Snare, and 2 lands, 1 forest and 1 mountain in this case. And basically all you need to know is that you should just not play those cards. They're not worth it. So when you get your packs, just take all of those ones out. And here's a list of those ones you can just put aside. And just immediately go to the list that we've changed it to. We added a creature, we went to 22. We've dropped down to 2 lands, down to 24. And we've changed the enchantment package, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But basically, this is the new list. This is the $5 upgrade. If you want to just spend a couple more dollars, this is the list that you're going to want to run. Now, there are 2 different things that we sort of seized on and built around in this deck, and that is undercosted creatures with high stats that use -1/-1 counters as the downside. So, for example, Defiant Greatmaw, 2 and a green for a 4/5. That's a big creature for 2 and a green. The downside is you have to put -1/-1 counters on creatures you control in order to play it. But that's not a big deal if all of our creatures are very big. And also, the other mechanic that we really wanted to sort of capitalize on in green is ramp. Now, ramp is a concept that accelerates your mana. Basically, you only get to play 1 land per turn. And so if you play a creature or an artifact that taps to produce land, then essentially you can end up with the ability to tap things for more land than you could play if you were just playing 1 land per turn. And so by doing this in green and red, it means that we can really ramp out, is what they call it, to a lot of bigger creatures, which is very important. The bigger creatures that we're ramping to are Ridgescale Tusker, which puts +1/+1 counters on things. We left Sheevan Dragon in the deck. That's one of the cards from the Welcome deck that's like a super classic magic card from the very beginning, and that one costs 6, and it pumps up. The ramp cards that we wanted to use in this case are sort of the cheaper ones. Druid of the Cowl, which is 1 and a green for a 1/3, tap to add mana to your mana pool, and then Naga Vitalist, which is 1 and a green for a 1/2, tap to add to your mana pool 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. So the goal here, obviously, just to make it so that we have more mana available to make sure we can cast our big things. And then we decided to keep a very similar removal package to what they had. We kept the Fling in there, we kept the Wrangle in there, we kept Rabid Bite, which makes your creature fight another one, but we added the cartouches and trials from Amonkhet. So Cartouche of Strength, Cartouche of Zeal, and Trial of Zeal. And Trial of Zeal is just a really good removal card that can also go to the face, and if you have a trial in play and you play a cartouche on one of your creatures, then you get to return the trial to your hand so that you can play it again. And the 3 mana cost isn't such a big deal when we've got so much ramp in the deck. So that's basically it. Take out the bad creatures, take out the bad cards that are not worth the mana that they cost. Basically, there were a lot of vanilla creatures that didn't have sort of extra text on them. They were just a 2/2 for 2 or a 3/3 for 3. And put in better ones like Khenra Charioteer, which is 1 red-green for a 3/3 with trample, and it gives all your other creatures trample. So this is the $5 deck. If you just want to try something that'll just work a little bit better, it'll come out a little bit more often, it has the right number of lands, then definitely check out this $5 version of the deck. But if you want to put a little bit extra in there, if you want to go a little extra mile, adding $15 can really actually do quite a bit for you. This is the $15 version of the deck. We removed some of the cards we added, but basically the cards that we ended up putting in there that for this version that are not in the $5 version are Aetherwind Basker, which is a giant 7/7 creature that just gets bigger and bigger every time you attack for the number of creatures you have. Channeler Initiate, we replaced some of the ramp creatures with this one, which also has -1/-1 counter synergy and allows you to tap for mana, and also it can become bigger in the later game. Prowling Serpapard is a creature that can really help you against control decks. It means that your creatures can't be countered, and neither can this one. So if you're running against a blue deck that is countering your spells, this can really help prevent your deck from being blocked. And then Rishkar, Pima Renegade, which puts +1/+1 counters on creatures and turns them into ramp creatures. And what's really interesting about Rishkar is he puts +1/+1 counters on creatures, and he can do it to himself. But his ability says each creature you control with a counter on it has tap to add green to your mana pool. So if your Channeler Initiate or if your Crocodile of the Crossing had put counters on something, they also count, and you can also tap that for mana. So we also added Samut, Voice of Dissent, which has all the keywords, Double Strike, Vigilance, and Haste, and other creatures you control have haste. So if you have this guy out and you have a Charioteer, you've got basically haste trample creatures at your command, which is really good. And then, of course, if it's later in the game and you're able to, Garruk's Horde means that you can look at the cast the top card of your library, which means that if you have Samut and the other one, they're also trample and haste, and you can just cast them and attack that turn. That's probably an edge case, but who knows? Maybe it will come up and it will be good. The other cards that we added in there are Dissenter's Deliverance, which is just a little bit of extra artifact removal. There are some pretty nasty artifacts running around Standard right now. Aetherworks Marvel is a big deal that you have to watch out for, and also Heart of Kirin are 2 big ones that are going to be a big problem. So we got to watch out for those. And then we also added a fun card called Lifecrafter's Bestiary for a little bit of card advantage, which says you get to look at the top card of your library at the beginning of your turn, which is always good. And also, whenever you cast a creature spell, you can pay 1 if you do draw a card. So this is a little bit of card advantage. The artifact itself doesn't cost very much. And then we've also upgraded the spell package a little bit by adding Incendiary Flow, which can exile zombie creatures, which is mainly what it is. So what you get for the extra $10 with the $15 version is a little bit of extra firepower, much more efficient mana creatures, a little bit better removal, and also a few cards that are tailored specifically toward the Standard metagame, which means the cards that other players are likely to have in their decks because they are powerful in Standard right now in Incendiary Flow, Dissenter's Deliverance. Okay, and those are the upgrades that we would make to these decks to make them just stompier and give them more value and improve the removal cards. Basically, make them playable. And so maybe you agreed with our choices, maybe you didn't. Let me know in the comments below what you think or if you would have added or changed anything. And don't forget to check out the other videos from the other content creators who have taken color pairs for this project. All of them have made videos like this to talk about the upgrades that they'd make to those decks, and maybe Stompy's not your thing and a different color pair like white and blue or black and blue would be more to your liking and you'd enjoy playing those decks better. So definitely check those out. And also, don't forget that we have a weekly podcast that you can get on any of your podcast streams. We're called Mox Team Zirconia, and we focus on Standard, which is this format that we were talking about today. And we also make sure that we brew up a lot of decks and we talk about a lot of cards and how cards interact. And we hope that newer players and newer brewers can learn a lot from us about how we brew and put together decks that are successful in Standard. And we would like you to join us. So check out your favorite podcast app, whether it's iTunes or Stitcher or Android or any of those, or even just go straight to our website and check out our podcast called Mox Team Zirconia. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.